Hey guys, it's Alexandra from iloveknots.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a beanie worked with the classic granny stitch pattern. I'm going to be using Swish worsted weight yarn. This is 100% merino wool, one of my favorite yarns to work with. This yarn is soft, it's cozy, it's not itchy, which is a big plus, and it's nice and durable. A similar yarn to this is Lion Brand Wool Ease. If you can't do wool, Lion Brand Heartland or WeCrochet Brava or Red Heart Soft is what I would recommend. I'm using an H8 5mm crochet hook. You're going to need whatever hook size you need to meet gauge. We're going to go over gauge after round 4, so you may need to go up or down a hook size depending on how your gauge comes out. And you're also going to need a soft tape measure so you can take gauge and check the final length of your beanie. Let's get started. To begin, we're going to start with a slip knot. So this is the working yarn for my tail. I have the short end over my fingers here. Wrap it around my index finger 2 times. Then I hold the tension with my thumb and middle finger. Pick up the loop on the left side of my finger. Pull it up over the other loop but not off my finger. Grab the loop that's on the left now, pull it up over the other loop and off my finger. Then I'll insert my crochet hook right into the center where my finger is. I'll hold the working yarn with my right hand and pull the short tail end just to tighten to normal tension, and we're ready to start. We're going to start with a chain 5. To chain, we yarn over the hook and pull through the loop. Yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through the loop. There's 3, 4, 5. Then we will insert our hook into the center of the first chain. Yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on our hook. We've just slip stitch joined to form a ring. And you'll see the ring right there in the center. On the top it looks like there's a little ring. That is actually the chain that we joined to. The ring that we'll be working into is the bigger one in the center. We'll hold our beginning tail end against the back of our chains, and as we work we're going to crochet over the chains and that tail. We'll start with a chain 2. Now we're going to work 11 double crochets into that center ring. To work a double crochet, we yarn over, insert our hook into the center of the ring, yarn over, pull through. There are 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Let's work one more together. Yarn over, insert your hook into the center ring, yarn over, pull through. There are 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. The beginning chain 2 does not count as a stitch, so we have 1, 2 double crochets. We're going to work a total of 11. We have 11 double crochets here. We're going to slip stitch join to the first double crochet, which is right here. But if you're not sure where to join to, you can count backwards using these V shapes on the top. Each one of those is a stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Insert your hook under both loops of that stitch. Yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on your hook. That is a slip stitch join, and that's how we'll end each round. The center hole that you see there, if you hold the fabric with your right hand and tug on that short tail end with your left, it'll close that hole up, and then we'll secure it closed when we weave in our ends later. For the first half of our beanie, we're going to be increasing. That means that we are going to be adding stitches, so each round will have more stitches in it than the previous one. This is going to give us a large circle that also lays flat. I work my increases a little bit differently than what you might be used to, and that is to help me keep my seam straight. Typically what you would do is you would work 2 stitches into this first stitch, 2 stitches into the next stitch, or 2 stitches into the first stitch, 1 stitch into the next stitch. I take that beginning increase and I split it in half. I work the first stitch as normal and all the other stitches as normal, and then after I'm finished, I would finish over here for this round. I work 1 more stitch into that first stitch to complete the first set of increases. Then I slip stitch join. The first stitch is going to come out to the left of the beginning chain, and the second stitch from that first increase will come out to the right of the beginning chain. This is going to keep your seam straight the whole time you're working this crown. So for round 2, I'm going to chain 2. Then I'll work my first double crochet into that first stitch. And our repeat for this is 2 double crochets into each stitch around. So 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 2 double crochets into the stitch after that, and continue all the way around. Then after we work our last set of increases over here, we'll work 1 more stitch into that first stitch to complete the first set of increases, and we'll slip stitch join. At the end of this round, we're going to have 22 double crochets. Alright, so I just worked the last set of increases. I need 1 more stitch to complete my round. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to insert my hook right into the stitch that is underneath the beginning chain. Yarn over, pull through, and complete my double crochet. This is going to be the second stitch from our first increase. So we have our beginning chain right there in the center. Then we have our first double crochet over here on the left, and now we have this double crochet here on the right. Now I want to insert my hook into the first double crochet and complete a slip stitch. Round 2 is finished with 22 double crochets. For round 3, chain 2, 1 double crochet into this first stitch, and we'll work the second half of that increase at the end. 1 double crochet into the next stitch. Our repeat for this round, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into the next stitch. You'll continue working all the way around, 2 double crochets in the next stitch, 1 double crochet in the next stitch. Once we're at the end, we'll work 1 final stitch into that first stitch and slip stitch join. This round is going to have 33 double crochets. So I've just worked the last stitch of my last repeat. I need to work 1 more stitch to complete this round, and I'm going to do it right into the stitch that the beginning chain 2 is coming out of. Then I'll insert my hook into the first double crochet and complete a slip stitch. Now round 3 is complete with 33 double crochets. For round 4, we're going to chain 2, double crochet into the first stitch, and we'll work the second half of that increase at the end. 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And now our repeat begins. 2 double crochets into the next stitch, double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Continue working all the way around. 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Once we finish our last set of increases over here, we'll work 1 more stitch into the first stitch and slip stitch join. This round is going to have 44 double crochets. I just worked the final stitch of my last increase. I need to work 1 more stitch into the first stitch. That completes my first set of increases, and now I'm going to slip stitch join to the first double crochet. Round 4 is complete with 44 double crochets. We're going to stop here and take our gauge. Gauge is measured across the center of a circle. That is the diameter of the circle, directly across the center, starting at the left on the left edge, ending on the right edge. Grab your soft tape measure, lay it across the center, and take that measurement. It should be 4 inches. If your diameter is measuring smaller than that, then you need to switch to a larger crochet hook. If your diameter is measuring larger than that, then you need to switch to a smaller crochet hook. Rework the first 4 rounds and take gauge again. If you continue and your beanie is not measuring the correct gauge, the finished beanie is either going to be too small or too big. For the newborn size, we're done increasing. This is as big as the crown is going to get. Now we're going to start working the body of our beanie, and as you work, you're going to notice that it's going to start taking a bowl shape, which is the beanie shape that we want. For round 5, chain 2. In the body of the beanie, our chain 2 counts as a double crochet. If we were to just work 1 stitch all the way around, we would have 44 double crochets. The granny stitch pattern is worked in a multiple of 3, and 44 is not divisible by 3, so we need to increase to 45. We're going to work 1 double crochet in this first stitch to give us that extra stitch. Now we're going to double crochet into each stitch all the way around. When you get to the end of the round, you're going to have 45 double crochets counting this beginning chain 2, and then we'll slip stitch join. So I've just worked the last stitch here. I have 45 double crochets. We have been joining to the first double crochet and not the chain, but in this round we're going to go ahead and insert our hook right into the top of that beginning chain. So there's one chain, two chains, right into the center of that chain, insert your hook, and complete your slip stitch. Oops. That way we have the extra space in the end for the granny stitch pattern. Now we're ready to start our granny stitch pattern. We're going to chain 2. Remember, this counts as a double crochet here in the body. So that will be the first double crochet of our first cluster. And we'll work 2 double crochets right into that same stitch that we slip stitched to. Now we'll skip the next 2 stitches and work 3 double crochets into the next stitch. Skip the next 2 stitches, 3 double crochets into the next stitch. Continue working all the way around, skip 2 stitches, 3 double crochets into the next stitch. At the end, you'll work your last cluster over here. You'll have stitches unworked that will match the same pattern, and then we'll slip stitch join. I just worked my last cluster. I have 2 stitches left unworked, and I'm going to slip stitch join to the first double crochet. To begin the next round, and for each round after this, you're going to slip stitch over into the next double crochet, then slip stitch into the space. Not into the next double crochet, but into the space created that's between the clusters, into the space. Into your hook, and complete a slip stitch. Then we'll start with a chain 2, and we'll work 2 double crochets into that same space. Then we'll skip the clusters and we'll work 3 double crochets into the next space in between the clusters. Skip the next cluster, 3 double crochets into the space in between the next 2 clusters. And continue working into the spaces in between clusters all the way around. You'll work your last cluster over here in this space, and then you'll slip stitch join. There's my last granny stitch cluster. Insert my hook into the first double crochet and slip stitch. You could slip stitch into the top of the chain, but I just think it's easier to slip stitch into the first double crochet. The only time I slip stitch into the chain is if I'm going to end it with like a single crochet edging. Keep in mind as you work, if you are a tight crocheter and this is starting to bunch up, you may want to go up a hook size just for the granny stitch pattern so that it stays looser. To start the next round, you'll just slip stitch into the next double crochet, then slip stitch into the space in between the clusters. Chain 2, 2 double crochets into that space. Each round is worked exactly the same as this. Slip stitch over into the space, chain 2, 2 double crochets into that space, 3 double crochets into each space all the way around. After you work for a little bit, take your tape measure out, measure from the top of the beanie all the way down. I like to add a round or 2 of single crochet onto the bottom to give it a clean edge. So I will leave room for that. 1 round of single crochet adds about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to keep that in mind as I work. For a newborn size, you want a total length of 5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and work off camera, and then I'll come back and tell you how many rounds I've worked. Alright, so for my newborn size, measuring from the top center here all the way down, my beanie is now measuring 4 3/4 inches. I've worked 10 rounds in total. I'm going to add 1 round of single crochet just to give me a little bit of length. It adds about 1/4 of an inch, which will get me to the 5 inches that I want. So what I want to make sure I do is that I work into the top of the beginning chain 2. So I just took out where I slip stitched over and my slip stitch. I'm going to take it back down to the last stitch of my last cluster, insert my hook into the top chain. So there's 1 chain, 2 chains, insert right into the center and complete a slip stitch. Because this beginning chain 2 counts as a stitch, so I have to also work into that chain as well. Chain 1, insert your hook back into the center of that top chain, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops are on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. That is a single crochet. We're going to be single crocheting into each stitch around. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. We don't work into the space, we work into the stitches. And we'll just continue working all the way around. After we work our final stitch over here, then we'll slip stitch join. I just worked my last single crochet of the round, insert my hook into the first single crochet and slip stitch join. And now my little beanie measures 5 inches tall. The only thing left is going to be to fasten off my ends and weave them in. I'm going to add a clip here showing how I weave them in on a larger size beanie that I'm going to make. Fasten it off. I'll pull up on that loop to break it. Then I'll take my crochet hook, I'll insert it into the same stitch that I slip stitched from the wrong side to the right side and pull that yarn tail through to the wrong side. So it's in a better position for me to weave it in. Then I'm going to turn my hat inside out. This is the wrong side of the beanie, the inside. We'll take our tail end here and thread it into our tapestry needle. When I weave in my ends, I'm going to do it here, I'm going to do it vertically, up and down. I'm not going to weave in horizontally because it restricts the amount of stretch in those stitches. So I am going to insert my needle into a nearby stitch. When I pick it up, the first stitch, I don't pick up the whole stitch. This is picking up the whole first stitch. I'm going to insert my needle into the center of that stitch, breaking it in half, and that is going to catch my yarn. Then I'll just weave under several stitches here. And when I come out, I also break that stitch in half. This helps to catch the yarn so that you don't have to worry about your ends coming out later. And as I pull, I just want to make sure that it doesn't distort the shaping here. So I'm just using my fingers to make sure it lays flat the way I want it to. That's the first pass. I'm going to go into a nearby stitch now. I always break in half the stitch in the beginning and at the end. So I'm going into a nearby stitch and then I'm going to work down through the same stitches that I just worked into. That's pass number 2. I always do 3 passes. That's my magic number. So I'm going into another nearby stitch down here, working upwards through those stitches I just finished working into. And now I am happy with this. I'm ready to weave in my ends. I'm ready to fasten it off. If you feel like this is a little bit loose, work a 4th pass. As long as you feel comfortable with it, that your stitches aren't going to come out. That's why I like to make sure I break the stitches. This is the initial tail of the hat from the top. Thread that into my needle there. I'm going to, I'm inserting my hand into the hat so that I can keep all the fabric in my hand and control it so I can reach it better. We're going to work clockwise underneath all those stitches until we get back to the beginning. Now that I'm back to the beginning, I'm going to insert my needle under a few more stitches just so I go a little bit past it. And then I'm going to hold the fabric and give it a pull to make sure that that hole is tightened closed. Now I'm going to insert my needle into a nearby stitch and I'm going to work upwards through several stitches. That counts as my 2nd pass. And now I'm going to come back down through a nearby stitch, working under several stitches that I already have worked through. And just give it a tug, and now I can fasten that off. Turn my hat back to the right side. Find the written pattern for this adorable little newborn size at iloveknots.com. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe. and I will catch you in the next video.